That is what I say every morning when I wake up.
Coffee?
Coffee, 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 coffee. Hey everyone, I'm Claire Saffitz. Welcome to my home kitchen. Today I am showing you one of my favorite recipes from Dessert Person, because I think a lot of them are my favorite. It's for coffee cake, because more desserts should taste like coffee. This coffee cake has sort of a classic ribbon that runs in the middle of the cake, a crumb topping, there's coffee incorporated into each component, and it is just a delicious, simple, but also surprisingly complexly flavored cake. Is complexly a word? No, I don't think so. It is now. Coffee cake is a cake you should have with coffee. So I thought to myself, why not just make the cake itself taste like coffee? Coffee to me is one of the most delicious flavors in the entire world. Coffee is the best part of my day. Even on like the best day ever, coffee is still like a major highlight, and I just want everything to taste like coffee. In terms of special equipment, you are gonna wanna use a mixer. I have my stand mixer out. You could use a hand mixer, and that is just to put together the batter. And the batter, like, it makes a pretty large volume of cake, so it's just easier to use a stand mixer that will do all the work for you. I have my baking pan. This is a 13×9. This is a sour cream coffee cake, so I have sour cream. That's kind of the base. A lot of coffee cakes are sour cream based. I don't know why, but it certainly makes a delicious cake. And I have brown sugar, granulated sugar, all the usual things, it's butter. But I want to point out the coffee flavoring. Here I have a ½ cup of brewed coffee that I let cool. And then I have instant coffee crystals. This is a great tool for baking. They basically are like dehydrated crystals that you can dissolve in liquid, and it adds a sort of a mild coffee flavor. There's ground cinnamon and cardamom. If you only have one, that's fine. Use whatever you like. So there's three main components. There's the ribbon, the cake itself, and the topping. We're gonna start by making the ribbon and the topping first. You can just set this aside. But before I do anything, I always preheat the oven and prepare the pan. My oven is on 350, and this time I actually remembered to move the rack. We will bake this in the center of the oven. All right, I'm gonna prepare my pan, which, what does it say to do? Oh, butter it, okay. I need a little butter. Oh, we can play a fun game called Let's Count the Kinds of Dairy I have in my refrigerator. So just from here, I can see creme fraiche, cream cheese, farmer's cheese, whole milk, butter, heavy cream, sour cream. It's a lot of dairy. Now, here's a thing that I do sometimes in a metal pan, because this butter is cold. I'll just like I'll just warm it over this little flame. I really just feel like it's hard to like you can't over butter a pan really. All right, so I'm covering the bottom and sides. This can go over here. Here I have the ingredients for that coffee ribbon that goes in the middle of the cake. This is 3 tablespoons light brown sugar, a tablespoon of those instant coffee crystals, and I think it's 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. So this step is very easy. Just mix it. Okay, so there's that. Now I want to make that crumb topping. So this is more of those instant coffee granules, 3/4 of a teaspoon of cardamom. Again, if you only want to use cinnamon, just use cinnamon, or you can leave it out. And a generous pinch, like a 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. So then I have all-purpose flour and light brown sugar. So I'm just gonna mix this together. Now a stick of unsalted butter. This is at room temperature. So I'm just using my hand to work all of this butter into the dry ingredients. And I want to keep doing this until no floury spots remain, and there really shouldn't be any like big solid pieces of butter. So you want to work it all the way in. So you know that you're done when the whole mixture holds together when you squeeze it. So like this looks good. And then you take up any large pieces like this and just break them up. So you have this kind of lovely crumb-like texture. I always do this. Now I need bowls. Hold on. I'm just gonna leave these out because I'm gonna need bowls. In basically every cake recipe, you're gonna combine the dry ingredients. So I have all-purpose flour. This is 3½ cups. Then my remaining dry ingredients, I have baking powder, baking soda, and kosher salt. So now I am gonna mix together my wet ingredients. So I'm gonna add to my brewed coffee already some additional coffee crystals, 1 tablespoon, and also some vanilla extract. Okay, well, full disclosure about the coffee in this recipe. The coffee in this recipe is actually Grady's cold brew, which comes from Brooklyn and is the absolute most delicious cold brew coffee that there ever was. And I love it so much. And it's a little pricey, and it's also a concentrate, but like, I don't care. I'll never not have Grady's. And now the sour cream. I have all my components ready to go. I'm gonna start mixing the batter. I have 12 tablespoons of unsalted butter, room temperature. And like, it's kind of warm in here as usual, so the butter is like a little on the soft side. You could do this with a hand mixer. Just know that if you are using a hand mixer, you are gonna have to increase those mixing times because it just doesn't have the kind of power of a stand mixer, but you'll still get a great result. It'll just take a little more time. All right, so I'm gonna add my sugars, light brown sugar and granulated sugar. And then I'm gonna add my oil. So I'm going to cream this together. And that is a step that basically means I'm gonna beat the butter and the sugars. And as that paddle action mixes everything and kind of hits it against the bowl, the sugar crystals cut into the butter and make air pockets. And that's why you get this really light, fluffy mixture. And that is just incorporating air into the cake itself and gives you a lovely light texture. So this is the step where you really want to take your time and like, you're not just trying to mix it, you're trying to aerate it. And the paddle helps with that. So I'm just going to give this a scrape. Not only am I aerating this mixture, but I am also dissolving a little bit of the sugar, and that is also crucial for cake texture. All right, I'm gonna add the eggs. You can see this butter, sugar, oil mixture is like very, very pale, and it started out as kind of beige. Definitely gained in volume. I'm gonna start adding my eggs. So I'll decrease the speed a little bit and then increase after I incorporate each egg. So add one at a time so that each one has a chance to emulsify into that butter mixture. So I'm going to scrape down the sides again. It's always a good idea to do this often, especially when you have a high volume of batter, because as effective as a stand mixer is, there are dead zones. So now we are going to add the wet and dry ingredients. You normally alternate wet and dry, but the rule of thumb is that you start and end with dry. So I'm going to do 3 additions of dry, punctuated by 2 additions of the liquid. On the lowest speed, I'm going to add about 1/3 of the dry ingredients, and now about half of my wet. And I'm adding fairly slowly because I want everything to be pretty even. Now another 1/3, which is half of my remaining dry mix. And then my remaining wet. You just get such a better texture and a much more evenly mixed batter this way. I also think you end up mixing less. You know, you don't want to overmix because that will toughen up your cake. The batter is mixed. I am going to switch to my spatula and finish mixing it by hand. I want an evenly mixed batter, so I'm really gonna fold it, make sure there's no floury spots either. Okay. I really like the assembly part of this cake. It's just kind of fun. So the first thing is going to be half the batter spread into the buttered pan. So now again, like the tool I'm never without, my second sidekick in the kitchen because Felix is the first, my offset spatula. I should name it. It just makes me think about in Buffy, Buffy's favorite steak is named Mr. Pointy. I should come up with a name for my favorite offset spatula. So I'm just working this into a single layer, an even layer, and working it right up to the sides and also into those corners. And then time for this coffee cinnamon mixture. The idea here is just that you want like even full coverage. And now the second half of batter goes on top. So just to make things a little easier, I go for like dollops. So kind of spread the batter out on the cake, and then it's just easier to work all the way to the sides and into the corners. So same thing, just smooth this out. And now that I have it dolloped all around, it's just easier to spread, and that layer of ribbon isn't going anywhere. And now, last step is adding the crumb topping, and like, it's just super loose, just scattered on there. If you see a big clump like that, just break it up a little bit. But like you also want different sizes. Okay, so this is all ready to go in the oven. Again, I have it on 350 and the rack is positioned in the center. This will bake much more evenly in the middle of the oven. Okay, but especially when I'm recipe testing or I'm like in, you know, development, like it's very normal for me to have a ton of different things, and then that's when I literally have a text thread of all my neighbors, and I'm like, come over with the plate. And in COVID, sometimes I just like leave it at their door. But yeah, this is normal. The cake has been in for about 40 minutes, and I want to check it. Because I have such a large volume of batter in such a wide pan, the cake is going to look a little underdone because it's going to be wobbly, but I want to use a cake tester, and as long as the tester comes out clean, the cake is done. So a little wobbliness is normal. It should be risen in the center. Yep. Clean. So it's done. So I'm going to let this, it's super hot. I'm going to let this cool off, and then we're going to cut it. I love how kind of golden the crumb topping got. It's going to be super crunchy. I also love seeing the little speckles from those coffee crystals. So very excited about this. It looks delish, but it definitely has to cool before we cut into it. This is great timing. We let the cake cool and also just finished lunch, so a piece of this will be my lunch dessert because I believe in dessert. Okay, so I'm gonna take probably a corner piece. This is not an easy cake to unmold, so just cut it from the pan. I'm gonna take a little square from right here. Ooh, does that look good? I feel like this looks really close to the one in the book. I always like when the real result looks like the one in the book, which it always should, because I was there. All of this was real food. Followed the recipes. It smells great. I'm very excited to try it, even though I've had it many times. What I love is the texture. The cake itself is really light and silky and not dry, not hard. It's just like a delightful slice of cake. So highly recommend one of those. Eat it for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Still great. And more things to taste like coffee, basically. So thank you for watching. This is the recipe from Dessert Person, and stay tuned for more recipes from the book. Like and subscribe. Or not, whatever. You don't have to. Hey everyone, I'm Saffitz. Thank you so much for watching me make recipes from my cookbook Dessert Person. It's so fun to be able to reach you again in your home and show you some of my favorites. I also want to highlight the work of other Penguin Random House authors. This book is called The Good Book of Southern Baking by Kelly Fields with Kate Headings, and it is really the new Bible of Southern baking. You can find classics like cornbread and biscuits, but also favorites from Kelly's bakery in New Orleans called Willa Jean. Check out the chocolate chip cookie recipe. It's a real winner. This is the only book on Southern baking you will ever need. So find this wherever you buy books.